All right, welcome back into another episode of The Pit. It's a special edition because it's Memorial Day and we're going to be talking college football. We're a couple months out away from August. I'm Drew Pavon here at WTVM in Columbus, Georgia, and I'm joined by my special projects manager, Jeremy Hayes, who is also a knower of ball, been covering Georgia and college football for a very long time, and me and him get to talk ball here at WTVM a good bit, and we're bringing it to you on our Georgia Regional Sports Show, and we got to talk about the Dogs, we got to talk about Tech, and just overall what to expect with the season, Germ. We got to start with the Dogs. Spring game, over and out. Injuries were a big problem, especially on the defense. Amari Williams is a huge loss. Your thoughts on Georgia going through the spring and really their expectation rolling through?
I think, Drew, first of all, super excited to be on this show because we ain't talked ball in a while.
Yeah,
we got to talk ball.
Yep.
But just going back to your question, when you think about it, Georgia in the spring, I think the biggest term or word that they got of the spring was depth, right? With the injuries, with those guys on, especially on the defense side of the ball that really couldn't go in the spring games, got guys with ACL injuries and other. You found out that Georgia was really deep. Now, is that surprising? No. Georgia has always been deep. Right. One thing about it, Kirby Smart will load the chamber. So just going back to what they went through in the spring, I think Gunner has to stay consistent. And when you think about what they lost in the wide receiver room and Zachariah Branch and Kobe Young and those guys, Georgia needed to make some strides at wide receiver, which I can honestly sit here and say they did. I think we feel a lot better about it than what we did going into the spring. Tight end room is probably the deepest in the country. The offensive line, there's some question marks there, but a lot of those guys got playing time due to injuries in 2025. So depth is what I got of the spring. So looking forward to what those guys develop and how to, the training and over the summer or whatnot going into the season. It'll be interesting to see how much that depth in the spring played into what's going to be the outcome on the 2026 season.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the tight end room because, I'm a big tight end guy, played in high school, and I love what they got. Obviously, Lucky back, which is huge.
Oh, yeah,
and then
huge.
Williams is just a big target. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Darnell Washington. I think he's a little bit more mobile than that. Darnell had to really structure in on blocking. He just got physically bigger.
Yeah.
Didn't move as well as he did when I saw him in high school. But you look at, Kenneth Prothero, I'm really interested to see where they put him in this offense.
He's an X-factor.
Yeah, he's a Swiss Army knife, as we like to call that. Is you don't know what to do with him because, you got to see him about it, and he was super talented and did a lot of big things. Reminds me a little bit of there was this kid coming out of high school, Caleb Odom, who he's at Ole Miss now.
Okay.
Went to Alabama. They didn't know what to do with him because he was that wide receiver, tight end hybrid. He's big, physical frame, but he moves like a wide receiver. And unless you don't have the offense built around it, I'm curious how they work him in. He was working the slot a little bit on G-Day, and he looked really well.
I was going to say that too. I haven't heard this yet, and I don't know what everybody's waiting on. But you can mark my words. When you think of Prothero, there's one guy that comes in mind. That's Brock Bowers.
Yeah, very similar frame.
It's Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
You can slide Brock out to the slot. He's going to be fine. You can put him out wide. It's going to be fine. You put him running back. I feel like Proto is going to be I'm not calling him Brock Bowers yet, but he reminds me a lot of Brock Bowers. A lot of people were scared of Brock Bowers because he wasn't just a tight end. You can put him wherever. Put him in motion. He can move. He can catch. He can throw. He can line up on a DB and make a play. I'm anxious to see what that looks like. That tight end room is unbelievable.
They're deep in a lot of
I don't even know if you. I don't know. I mean, I think you can. A lot of people will say Lawson Lucky will be the one.
Yeah.
Just by seniority.
But we know how that room works, and we know how
any of those guys can be one.
I mean, the way Bobo works that room, any 3 or 4 of those guys in that room could be working it.
Right. I'm excited to see really what that tight end room right now in Georgia secondary, which I still don't think a lot of people is talking enough about either. Is really what I'm looking for.
I love that secondary. Robinson and Bolden, and then I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the transfer from Clemson, the All-American safety.
Yep.
They got him as well, Ellis Robinson, KJ Bolden. The list just goes on. I think they got 3 top 10 DBs. I think there's an argument that they have the top 2, top 3 secondary in the country. I think up there with Notre Dame and Alabama in regards to returners and just overall production and guys with reps. And you have Kirby Smart as your head coach, and that helps a lot because, he likes to work with those DBs. But we're talking about deep rooms. They got running back room always just seems to be deep. Like they just keep rotating guys. Nate Frazier obviously going to be back for the Dogs. What's a name out of that room that, people should really be looking out for in regards to the running back room?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, Nate Frazier is easy to say, but they're 5 deep right now.
Yeah.
They're 5 deep. And Nate Frazier, to me, has to be that guy. I think Georgia needs to, and they always going to have that run game. They're going to pound the rock. But I think it's time for, they shed a rock a lot, but somebody has to just be the outlier. When Nick Chubb sat back there, he took the rock. Ty Gurley sat back there, he took the rock. When they was in,
I feel like with them, you just kind of, and they've had that rotating committee, and that's popular now. But I think with Frazier, the experience he's had, and we know he can take over a game and be your solidified number one. So you just kind of let him tote the rock for the rest of the game, and just be like, all right, we're going to give him 15 to 20 touches.
You got to.
Yeah.
And I think it only makes that room better. They got a bunch of young guys. Phillip is another one that I don't think people talk about enough, So I'm anxious to see what they do in that room. They was deep last year. Having Nate Frazier back is huge.
Yeah.
It's massive. You lost Robertson to transfer portal. And then McCray, I think he's out too.
Yeah,
as
he
well.
lost eligibility.
So it's just when you think about it, they're still deep. Georgia still is gonna always be all right in the running back position. But I think it's time this year that somebody just have to step up and just be that dude.
Yeah. I think Nate Frazier's going to have to be that guy when it's all said and done at the end of the day for the Dogs. But, having Nate Frazier back and, a couple offensive line pieces are moving, and, they had a lot of inexperience for 8 weeks straight.
Yeah.
They were shuffling that different line.
I don't think it was the starters didn't start until Mississippi State?
I think it was Florida. They maybe
was it a Florida game?
I think it was Florida.
One of those games, yeah.
They were like, all right, we're going to set our ways, and this is what we're going to go about. And I remember talking to you at that time was like, you just got to throw a group of 5 out there because that's how they're going to learn and they're going to build chemistry. And if you're working with a guy next to you, you got to have that. You got to be able to trust that guy to your left or your right to make like, all right, if he knows what I'm thinking, he's going to make that block and he's going to tag off and he's going to, bob, duo, whatever your calls may be. That's going to be the biggest thing. But, talking about Frazier coming back, Gunnar Stockton's second year as a full starter. I like what I saw from him in G-Day, just more of like mechanics and development wise, and it looked like he cleaned up a few things and he looked sharp. And obviously it's G-Day, you can't get too drawn into the smoke with it, but I like the progression I saw with him.
Gunnar just has to stay consistent.
Yeah,
he don't need to be the best. I saw a stat somebody put up on the post that was ranking the quarterbacks for this upcoming season of 2026, and Gunnar was down at the bottom. And honestly, that's one of those things where it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Gunnar doesn't have to be the number one quarterback in the SEC
to
be that guy, man.
But he wins.
He wins
he's
games.
consistent.
Just be consistent.
He's a gamer. Like, he's going to control the clock. He's going to control your offense. And we saw it at times, like that Tennessee game, like he can throw the ball. Dude. Yeah. He can sling it.
I mean, realistically, you lost the Sugar Bowl, but Gunnar, there was a point in that game where I was like, this is probably his best game.
Yeah. I feel like he was composed. And I think it was, leading up into the week, it was like, all right, Gunnar's redemption. Yeah. What happened last year in the Sugar Bowl? Like, he just looked scrambled.
And not only just that, too, though, man. Gunnar showed this past year, and I hope he showed again this year, that he does have some emotions. Mm-hmm. He played with passion during that Sugar Bowl. And there was a couple of games that he played. I mean, the Alabama game and the SC Championship. It was just fire, And
the whole team, I think it was all 3 phases of the ball. It was just like, punch him in the mouth.
Yes,
like we're taking control.
Yes. So I'm anxious to see which Gunnar we get this year. Is it going to be I'm going all out Gunnar? Is it going to be the energy Gunnar, or is it just going to be the Gunnar that comes in and it just manages? I will say this though. I'm not saying that Gunnar should not have the job, but going back to that spring game, I think a lot of people learned and got an opportunity to see too that Georgia's deep at the quarterback room too.
Oh yeah, I mean they played I think 7 quarterbacks threw the ball. Like
and
they had the walk-ons like Bobo, like
it's insane.
It was down the lane.
But behind Gunnar, you got Ryan, who I thought looked really well. he has a chance, and
And
I'm
him
not saying
sticking
Kirby
around
should
makes
play
me
him.
think
Yeah.
that he's going to be
And,
the starter
I'm not
next
sitting
year.
here saying Kirby should play those backups, but I think Georgia's going to be okay at quarterback for a good bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a safe position to say that they have depth. I mean, we keep saying they have depth all over, which is true.
Yeah.
Before we go, when we start talking Tech, just a new receiver room. We mentioned a lot of guys gone: Colby Young, Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch. Who's someone that people should really look out for in the wide receiver room? It's tough. Because, I mean, when was the last time Georgia had a 1,000-yard receiver? Like, just the way their offense runs.
I got two.
Yeah.
Tyron Taylor. He dropped a couple of big passes, and that's how people remember him right now. It's him dropping a couple of passes that maybe he should have caught that would have changed some games. Alabama was one of them. He dropped a couple passes in. Ole Miss, I think, was another one that he dropped a couple passes in. Everybody, that's how they remember him.
Yeah.
But
That's how they remember a lot of Georgia receivers the past couple of years.
But what people don't really realize is those guys are young, and those guys are recruited for a reason.
Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that at any given point, especially with his speed, he's a track guy, especially with his speed, any given point, he's going to have a breakout year. And the other guy I'm going to say is Hilton.
Yep.
He's a dog. And I think he had a nagging injury last year that kept him out a lot. I don't think he came. I think he played a little bit in the Auburn game or warmed up a little bit in the Auburn game. He didn't really play a ton. He started showing some signs of playing towards the end of the year, but he's another one that's a young guy that's coming back. That I think that they're not. When you see him, you're not thinking like, oh, that's a huge. He's not Kobe Young where he's 6'5". He's small. He's a Zachariah Branch size receiver. But trust me. Just wait and see.
Yeah, I think another name you got to mention is Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech. I think he has a legit reason, and everything I'm hearing out of camp with him is all good things. And I think that he has established a really good relationship with Gunner, which I think is key. But, a lot to look forward to. They got a gauntlet of the schedule with, of course, the SEC. That's just how it's going to be. And we still got a lot to talk about with Georgia, and we're so far out. I mean, we're on Memorial Day, but we're so close to football. SEC Media Days are in July. I'm sniffing it. I'm ready for it to come here now, and I'm excited for just ball to be back. That's for sure. But, of course, we got to talk about Georgia Tech, and that's all going to be coming up next on your Georgia Regional Sports Show, The Pit. All right, welcome back into another episode of The Pit. It's a special edition here on this Memorial Day because we're talking a little college football. A couple months out, SEC Media Days in July, season starts end of August. Figured why not middle of spring, early summer, get to talk a little ball, of course, with Jeremy Hayes, our special project manager here at WTVM in Columbus, Georgia. We talked Georgia the block before. Now we're going to talk Georgia Tech. Brent Key has really turned around this program. And a little bit of a reset on offense, and I was at Tech's spring game, and I was very impressed with the new additions. Justice Haynes is obviously the big name from Michigan, the foreign running back from Buford, and the hometown kid coming back to the A, and then Alberto Mendoza, the quarterback, pretty much solidified as the number one, brother of reigning Heisman winner and first overall pick, Fernando Mendoza. Alberto, very impressed with him throughout the spring game. Of course, Malachi Hosley in that running back room as well. Going to be a little 1-2 punch with Justice Haynes. Malachi from Columbus, Georgia. Jeremy, you saw him play in high school. Went to Penn, was all Ivy League. I think he was Ivy League MVP when he was there, but now stepping into his second year at Tech. They brought in some other big transfers from Alabama and across the board. Really like what they have going on. Obviously, new offense with a new OC in there, with most of the staff heading down to Florida. Jeremy, your thoughts on Georgia Tech and what are you expecting from Brent Key's team this year?
One thing I can say about Georgia Tech is Brent Key has built a culture at Tech. Georgia Tech is no longer that team that you could just schedule and say, "Oh, this is an easy win for us."
Yeah, they're not running that triple option anymore.
Tech is one of those teams where you have to, you see it on your schedule, you got to prepare a little better for it. And that's because of Brent Key. And he's created a physical mentality up there at Georgia Tech. I think that for me, Tech they have to just continue to build, because right now Tech went from, I say, a bottom tier team to a competing type
ACC
team, right?
content.
Which means that you have to continue to build momentum, and I think that's the biggest thing for Georgia Tech right now. They just got to continue to feed out the success. I will say that they struggled this year. I was kind of disappointed that BYU bowl game they had, Pop Top Bowl, which is Pop Top Bowl, man. You got to win the Pop Top Bowl.
Yeah, that's the best bowl.
They struggled in that game against BYU, and BYU is good, but that's one of those games where if I'm a Tech fan, I want to see Georgia Tech come out on top, right? Because that's the next step for them. That you build that physicality. You're looking at the 2026 schedule that's front loaded, and then you end the year with your rivals. Just lost one of your best receivers to your rivals. You got to find a way to try to finish in December and then to start playing in late December and January. And that's where I think Tech should be focusing. Really have their focus at right now with their program.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, started the year undefeated on that streak, and then the just really tough month of November where I think they went 1-3, if I'm not mistaken, leading into that final year. And they look like, hey, like we're going to go to the ACC championship. We may get into the field of 12. And you mentioned the Pop-Tart Bowl. BYU's a very good team.
They're a great team.
A lot of people forget they were a fringe playoff team. Yeah. They were just below Miami and Notre Dame in those rankings. So a very good team, and just I think Tech was just so beat up, and they had gone through that tough stretch, and they lost to Pitt at home, and that kind of knocked them out of the ACC title game, and that tough stretch at Boston College.
The Georgia game was was
just ugly for them. I mean,
and they
beat
were
up
in that
Georgia
game.
too.
And they were in that game.
It was just we were both there. That was just an ugly game. It was smash mouth, like we'll play at Piedmont Park thing at the Benz.
4 p.m. Piedmont Park.
4 p.m. Piedmont Park. Day after Thanksgiving, we'll see you there. Brent Key football. But I like what they got. What I saw from them in the spring game was they were throwing the ball more, and that was the big knock with Haynes King, because I remember going to the game immediately after Clemson. Was like they were riding high. They were up 21-0 in the first quarter. Then they just went stagnant for 2 quarters, and they couldn't advance the ball because they couldn't throw the ball. Temple was like, all right, we're just going to load the box, and we know it's either going to be Haynes or both Hayneses, or it's going to be Hosley running the ball, and kind of forced him to throw the ball to try to move it downfield, and he struggled when that kind of happened, and they didn't really have that passing game down the stretch, because when you take away the run game, and you can't throw, it's serious problems are going to that's just how it goes. But interesting to see with Mendoza was like they're going to run the ball well. Mendoza's got actually pretty good legs, which surprised me. Not as big as his brother. He's a little bit more shorter. I think he's about 6'2", 6'3". Fernando's like 6'5", 240, and moves decently well. Alberto moves well, but he just has that perfect touch on the ball, like stand in the pocket, just drop it in there. That's what I was really impressed with. Roche, a tight end that went off in the spring game. Brent Key is huge on him. Just interested to see. They bring in Noah Carter from Alabama. He's going to be on the edge for them. I think he really likes the defensive presence. They just need to get more pressure. And for Tech, you start the year against Colorado, you get to be home. I think that's a Thursday night game, prime time, and against prime time. And you're playing the Buffaloes and Deion's return to the A. That's going to be a sold out game.
Tennessee shortly after that. I mean, their schedule is, and I think Clemson shortly after that. I mean, it's their schedule. Like I say, it's front loaded, and they're going to get tested real quick, in their schedule. And it's just the question is can they complete a game?
Absolutely, and I think they'll beat Colorado. I just think the talent that Deion has there, and I'm getting off topic, but I think they could, take care of Colorado. I believe that Tennessee game is at home. Yeah, right.
Yes,
that's at home. That's like week 3.
Yeah, they get Tennessee home.
Those are being at home on the flats. It's when that place gets packed, it can become a serious atmosphere. We saw it with the Clemson game. But, just bringing that energy, if you could start off on the right foot, you get moving in the right direction for that back half of your schedule in the ACC where, ACC every year, I feel like we're talking about like 1 or 2 teams that's just like randomly in there.
Yeah. The ACC is a weird, and we'll talk about college football as an entirety, but the ACC is just one of those weird conferences. I mean, when you think about it out loud, Tech has an opportunity, just like any other team in that conference has an opportunity. They just got to win the games they're supposed to win. And that's what it boiled out to. It's the same thing with Miami last year. Miami was always in the conversation until they went and blew that Thursday night game, Friday night game, I apologize, up in Louisville. And
that ACC, man, they'll get you with those Friday night games.
I'm going to tell you right now, those Thursday night ACC games, I wouldn't want to play in them.
No, no, we saw that with, what was that, Florida State, Virginia?
Miami, Louisville.
Yeah.
It's just always, the
ACC
always had those weird games on Friday nights in the fall. It just happens.
And the SEC, they're not they're not touching that, which I kind of like.
And Greg came out with that,
and he was like, we don't want to take away from high school, which is true. Like in Southeast, like
we need to talk to the AHSA. They got their 7A state champions on a Saturday.
Well, Greg Sankey's looking out for HSAA, but he's not looking at the HSA is not looking out for him.
Oh yeah.
All right, we mentioned college football. We're going to pick our risers and fallers for the upcoming year, and that's coming up all next on the Pit, your Georgia regional sports show. All right, welcome back into the Pit, your Georgia regional sports show, and we got done talking Georgia football and Georgia Tech football here on a little Memorial Day special about just college football as a whole leading into the year, and we're a couple months out, but we talked about the two big teams in the Peach State. Let's talk about college football as a whole. Of course, I'm joined by Jeremy Hayes here at WTVM, our special projects manager. We're talking ball. Jeremy, I got to pose a question to you, and I didn't tell you what this question was going to be before, but last year we saw Clemson, LSU, Penn State, all teams with huge, rankings going into the top 10, and they ended up being frauds.
Oh yeah.
Looking at this top 25 and these teams that got the hype going in, who are your teams that you think will fall to grace like those teams did this past year?
Before I can answer that question, which is a great question, and you threw that on me, we got to kind of talk about who we think is at the top. I think there have been a lot of coaching changes and player shuffles here and there that's came with some of these coaching changes that is creating a lot of hype around these teams. The first team I can think about off the top of my head is LSU. Right? They got Sam Leavitt, they got Lane Kiffin,
Jordan C. I mean, the list goes on of the guys.
And then when you look at their schedule, it's like it's building up them to have success, right? And you don't even really know what that team has, right? You know the pieces. And so the first team that comes to my mind is LSU. But I'm going to say this, and it's going to rub some people the wrong way, but the answer is Texas.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I want to preface this. Behind this question is, those teams we looked at, Clemson, LSU, Penn State, Nussmeier, Klubnik, Allard, were all three quarterbacks that people expected to take that next step.
Heisman
in those Heisman conversations to take that next step. Now, you mentioned Texas. That's a great point. People are just expecting, Arch Manning had
him ranked 1.
Exactly. He got better as the season ended, like those other three quarterbacks, but we're just expecting he takes that step like those other three guys. Yeah. Texas is one team that do so. I've never been big on Sam Leavitt personally. Like, I didn't get the hype last year going into the year. We're like, Arizona State's got Sam Leavitt. I never really saw that.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I kind of think Oklahoma. Like, people are like, John Mateer had those great games. Like, they lost a lot. I just think, does he take that next step?
If you're picking Oklahoma for the offense, then you don't know ball.
I'm not saying the offense. I'm saying John Mateer.
Now, I will say this. I think that two things can be true. John Mateer has experience because he played in the league. John Mateer did not get any better from start to finish. Two things can be true. I think if you subtract Oklahoma's defense, I don't think they are in anybody's conversation across the board in the SEC. No. Their defense literally saved their season for the entire season last year.
And they ran and Mateer's thumb thing, that was weird how that all kind of derailed their season. And
again, two things can be true.
I mean,
injuries can happen and it betray you for sure. But I think that we saw Mateer when they didn't play competition.
Yeah. But even when they didn't play, it wasn't, and they didn't have a run game either. I think that they brought in Jaden Ott, who I thought was going to be a superstar for them, and their offense just didn't do as much as we expected them to do. And they flashed that. I think they just caught a lot of hype after that Michigan win, and John Mateer and the Heisman talk are like, "Whoa, is this kid going to be the first overall pick?" And this happens like every week of college football because this is just the machine that it is.
Yeah.
But Oklahoma's one team. Texas, give me another. Who you? Kind of LSU you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that if I had to choose outside of those programs, I really might just go back up north to Oregon.
That's a really
just
Oregon's
because
a good one.
They always get this preseason. I think it's been 4 years in a row now. They get this preseason love and hype. And they're gonna win it all. They got the tools and they got the pieces, and they returned a really good quarterback and more. And I do think they have pieces. They just haven't been able to finish, and not only have they not been able to finish, they haven't really gotten there.
Yeah.
You think about it. So I think Oregon will be another one of those teams.
But this all and that's why I posed the question after that was like, all these teams we're mentioning are quarterbacks that people are just expecting to take that
have
step.
a good season.
And look, Dante Moore could have left, and Dante Moore probably would have been the second overall pick to the New York Jets.
Yeah,
in the draft, that's the way it would have probably fell. But we're just expecting these guys to take that very next step. And I think that's what kind of falls into the hype. And this is why college football is so great, because we just hype up these teams and we juice them.
Right.
In the past couple of years, like I've been good with it, kind of weeding out. I wasn't big on Clemson last year.
Yeah,
they kind of fell off. Yeah. I wasn't big on Penn State. I've never been a Drew Allar guy. Year before that, like Florida State coming in with all that hype, didn't believe that either. I'm interested to see who that kind of hype builds around. Oregon's a good one. I like that. Penn State, I'm going to be interested to see what they kind of bring to the table. They bring in 20-some transfers from Iowa State. So I don't know if they'll be back to that way, but I like what they kind of have. But a lot of questions in the SEC going.
And they got a new coach too up at Penn State.
Yeah,
I didn't even include them because to me, you have to consistently be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be in that conversation.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of teams that consistently be there. I mean, a lot of the easier answers would be a Georgia or Alabama.
Yeah.
But Georgia and Alabama has always been established.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I don't think there's anybody picking on to be out.
Yeah.
So that's really easy to, when you think about the college football as a totality. When you think about the teams that should be there, the preseason love. Yeah, I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. Let me ask you. I got a question for you though.
All right.
Who right now would be your top 4 teams going into the start of the season?
In the rankings?
Yes.
Me and you are on the same page with this.
Okay.
National champions should always be one.
Always be one.
And what Indiana's got coming in, I like. I really do. So I'm just going to put on one, because you got to respect the title. You got to respect SIG. You got to respect what they were able to bring in and kind of just restructure and just reload on this offense. So I'm going to put Indiana up there. Ohio State, you got to put 2. Mm-hmm. I think what they have, and Jeremiah Smith, obviously there. Julian Sain's another quarterback that, we didn't bring up, but, he wasn't super impressive.
They get tested week 2.
Yeah, they get tested when you got to go to Texas, which is going to be the game of the week on ABC. Indiana, Ohio State. I'll go Texas 3 and then Ohio State 4. I feel like they're really going to, and I think this is how the AP is going to fall, is they're really going to push Texas up there to make sure that the hype for that game is there. And we know that's why these preseason AP poll rankings are as high as they are, is because they're really pushing the hype for those first couple weeks to be like, okay, we need these big time.
The TV ratings matter.
No, they do. And they infect the media voters. And look, there's 70 AP voters. Like, not all of them watch all these teams. So they just go off the rankings and they go off of who they're seeing on national television.
I will say if LSU beats Clemson week 1, LSU would be a top 10 team only for week 3
I
because
could
of
see
the Ole
them
Miss
being
matchup.
Yeah, I could see them being like a 10 or 11, I think, with just they're going to stick them there and be like, okay, like this is what we're going to see. Clemson's a big question mark too. We're not sure who they're going to have. All right, we're running out of time here, but quick, Jeremy, sleeper team for this year going into college football.
I just said them, Ole Miss.
Okay, you like Ole Miss?
I like Ole Miss because now Pete Golding has a full year of doing what he needs to do as head coach. I've never been a Pete Golding fan. I can say it out loud, but Ole Miss love him, and that's all that matters. Your quarterback loves you. And he loves those guys over there that puts on the helmets every Saturday. I think Ole Miss is a sleeper, and it's because of Trinidad Chambers. Yeah,
Kawan Lacey and Trinidad Chambers are back for Ole Miss this year. All right, thanks for joining us on The Pit, your Georgia regional sports show, for a little Memorial Day special edition of a preview to college football. Thanks for joining us. Join us back next Monday.